Hi, I'm Ken from DiscGolfMonkeys.com.
And I'm Jesse from DiscGolfMonkeys.com. Today we're going to show you how to dye discs. And the first thing to realize about our dyeing process is we do use clothing dye. So step one in how to dye a disc is to make sure that you're wearing the right clothing. For instance, you probably wouldn't want to dye discs with clothing dye when you're wearing this.
Or this.
So let's go change into something more appropriate. And we're back. This is how you should be dressed. Dude, not appropriate. Alright, Jesse here. We're going to show you our dyeing kits. This one's mine. First, we've got a pan that is suitable for heating on a stove that's the right size to put a disc in. We've got contact paper. This is just standard shelving paper from Walmart. I've got white and clear, and I'll talk to you about the differences between those a little later. We've got jars for leftover dye. We've got dye packets in different colors. I've got my little X-Acto kit. Spare blades. There's a little pin that I use to mark on the contact paper. And yeah, I have a pink X-Acto. I totally ganked this from my wife's craft room. I've got a little sponge brush. You can sometimes do a sponge technique on dye. If you're cutting circles in a disc, this is a handy little thing. It's a compass with a blade on the end. So you can cut circles in your design. And then I've got a little goof off to remove adhesive. And last but not least, I have this little plastic scraper. This is great for getting bubbles out of contact paper and also getting the edges down well so dye doesn't seep under the edges of your design.
Hey, this is Ken from DiscGolfMonkeys.com. This is the basics of my kit. Normally, I would have some powdered grit dye available at your finer low discount stores.
Drugstores,
Kmart, Walmart, what have you. That's what the dye we actually use. It combined with hot water to actually dye on the disc. But I left all my dye at the house because I'm over here at Jesse's and they don't want to tote all that stuff. Anyway, I've got some acetone available from practically any hardware store. This is used to remove the metallic stamps and any other type of stamp from disc. I got some shot cloths to help clean that process up. I happen to believe a little bit in safety, so I use some chemical resistant gloves and some eyeglasses. Instead of contact paper, I use actual sign vinyl. I picked this up off of eBay for like $10. It was a roll of like, I don't know, a couple hundred feet or something ridiculous like that. This is what they use in professional sign making to make the letters and stuff off. Just be sure you get one at least 10 inches wide. Anything shorter than that, you won't be able to cover your disc. If you're going to be using a hobby knives, you can use these cheap single blades use, but as soon as they get dull, you throw them away. Go ahead and invest yourself in a decent handle. One that is comfortable for you. They come in a bunch of different sizes. I like this one. It's almost like a number 2 pencil. I prefer it that way. And you can get yourself a bunch of these boxes that contain 15 blades and also a place to put your dead blades. And this is the bowl I normally use. I normally heat my water and dye on a electric 2i. Just got 2 burners in a camp pot. And once it gets to a certain temperature, I pour it into the bowl, and then I flip my disc in on top of that, which we'll be seeing us do here in just a little bit. Excellent. First thing you're going to want to do is when you pick up a disc, you're probably going to notice it's got a stamp on it. You want to remove this, and the easiest way we found to remove it is to get yourself some acetone and some wipe rags, and an understanding person will let them use your sink.
Yeah, that's me.
You want to get a decent portion on the rag. You don't want to pour it directly on there. And you notice that I'm wearing gloves and safety eye equipment because I value my life and my fingerprints. But if you just start rubbing on it, see, it starts to come off. And like a champ, it's now gone. It'll come right off. And their blacks will usually come up, but the red leaves, for some reason, likes to leave a little bit of red dye number 5 behind. But there you go, clean disc.
All right, so you peel the backing off after you have cut an appropriately sized piece that will entirely cover your disc. The way I do it is lay it down on the counter, put your thumb on the back, push it out just a little bit because you don't want bubbles. Start in the center and just work your way out. I'm imagining it's kind of like kneading dough, but I wouldn't know because I'm not a woman.
What are you doing there? Working the edges?
Again, we're just pushing the contact paper out towards the edges. You don't want bubbles. And if you get a little wrinkle or a bubble, you can just lift the edge of the paper, push it back down. All right, for the edges, I normally get my little scraper. You see I have a bubble there, you can just push it out to the edge of the disc.
That show up on camera. Yeah, there we go. It's kind of like a little blister.
There it goes. All right, now at this point, I do not wrap the edges of the contact paper under the disc. What I will do, so I have a solid working surface, is I'll just stick this puppy down to the counter.
All right, and Jesse was working with contact paper. I'm working with a slightly more finicky piece of material. So this is the sign vinyl. It's a little bit harder to work with. It likes to tack to itself a lot more than the other stuff does. And so it's kind of like duct tape. You want to be sure you pull the backing off to kind of leave it flat so that it doesn't flip up accidentally and touch itself. Once it touches itself, just throw it away. This stuff is really super adhesive. I did like the way Jesse did the centering technique. I'm going to try that out. I think I normally just slapped it down there, but I like the way he did that, so I'm going to see if I can improve upon this. Just trying to get it right in the middle. Work the way out. Yeah, all right, not bad. We can just flip it over. You can see really not a lot of bubbles to work out. This material comes up. What you can do is if you do have a bubble, you can just pull it up from the edge. And this stuff is kind of stretchy, so if you pull it, stretch it out, you can get a much smoother feel. And also, unlike contact paper, you really don't have to worry about the bubbles that much with the stuff because of it's really super tacky. When you cut your design out, you can just press the edges down and the bubble will go away. So, however, you do sometimes get some big wrinkles that you kind of got to work out. Going at it 90 degrees, pull this corner, pull that corner, pull this corner, pull that corner. And I don't care about the edges, I do just wrap it around. So I do like the way he stuck it to the counter, that was kind of cool. This stuff may be super tacky. And as you can see, it's got more air bubbles than a golf ball. Work those out. And maybe I'm just not as good at this as Jesse is. Everybody wants to hear that. But this material is a little bit more forgiving. Maybe that's probably a good thing. There you go. Ready to cut. And now we're back. We've printed out our designs on paper. You may recognize these from step 1 and step 2. If you guys have been following along our series of tutorials, so this is the step 1 and this is the step 2. Now, I guess you guys are wondering how you actually get these type of images onto this. Well, you kind of do it like that. Some designs do require a centering technique, which Jesse is going to go into. Other designs, you kind of get it close, you eyeball it. It's your disc, you do what you want to. Take the paper and then tape it down on the disc. Jesse, let's see your centering technique.
All right, a lot of times when you put an image onto a disc, it's not important for it to be exactly centered. If you're working with a geometric design, sometimes that can be pretty important. You can measure your disc and draw lines on the contact paper to find the exact center. The easiest way I've found is just take a Sharpie or a ballpoint pen. There's like a little molding center dot on the back of the disc. You just color that sucker in. Get it nice and black, and then you can hold your disc up to the light. Your center mark will show through there, and you can put your design on there. That's the quickest way to get your design centered if you're going to do that. What I use when I tape my design down is painter's tape. And as you can see from my kit, you can just reuse this stuff. I just stick it on the edge of my X-Acto kit, and you just use it over and over, and just put your design where you want it. Tape the very edges down, make sure you leave enough room so you can actually cut the design out.
All right, once you get your image that you're wanting to work with taped down to your disc, you begin cutting. We should start from the center and work your way out, because if I started cutting out the black around the edge, well, then I just cut the whole design out. What you want to do is find your detail marks. Sometimes the lines are a little too small to cut exactly. A little thicker is perfectly fine. But you want to cut hard enough to go through the paper and hard enough to go through the vinyl, but not hard enough to go through the plastic.
Essentially, you're cutting away the parts where the die is going to be. So in this particular instance, we're going to cut around all of the black. Then after we get the black cut, we'll peel it off, and that's where the die will go through the contact paper.
And this is Ken. I'd like to just mention sometimes it's a good idea to have the cutout printed out a couple of times, just in case you need to lay it back over exactly where you were.
So, all right, so I'm not going to put you through the excruciating process of watching me cut this entire thing out. It will probably take about 30 minutes, but that's how you do it. I always print out a reference just to make sure you don't peel up the wrong image, wrong part of the image rather. Basically anything that's black on the image we want to peel up off of the disc. So we'll find a spot to start at. And I would not try to just yank this off quickly. You can peel up the wrong parts of the image. Sometimes when you're cutting tight corners, you don't get it cut exactly right. This is the spot where you can fix those cutting mistakes. All right, what do we got going on over here?
Bad as that. You can see how it comes up. And what you want to do is remove all the vinyl the dye is actually going to go into the disc. You want to leave essentially the white spaces in your image are going to remain the color of the disc, and everything that you trim out will become black or whatever color you dye. These are probably just going to be black images, but you just keep doing that until you get the entire thing picked out. You can use some bigger sections. Let's see if we can take out. And you can always cut across the areas, and sometimes you can see it this way after you've got it done. You see places you've missed, and you can always make corrections at this point. And even if you accidentally peel up some places that you shouldn't have, if you haven't removed them completely from the disc, it's pretty easy to go ahead and replace them. If you have, cut yourself a small piece of vinyl or contact paper, lay it back down, and see if you can cover up the spot, because you don't want it to the dye to go to where it shouldn't go. And I'll be back in a couple of hours after I get this stuff weeded. Man, this stuff is sticky. Why do I use this anyway?
I'm standing here thinking I'm so glad I used contact paper.
That's right. I read somewhere that signed vinyl was the way to go to it, and I've invested so much money in the $4 or $5 I spent on eBay to get this roll that I just can't seem to bring myself to use anything. But this stuff is nasty. Really, honestly, guys, use the contact paper.
Alright, so I've got mine, as Ken says, weeded, whatever that is. He's hanging out on some vinyl forums, apparently. I had a more complex design. I got mine weeded a little quicker than Ken, I think, using the contact paper rather than his tacky vinyl. The downside of the contact paper is that it is not as sticky on the disc, so you need to be sure to get the edges down really, really well because you don't want any dye coming up under the edges of your design. I'll take my plastic scraper again and just make sure everything is down really, really well. And it's at this point that I'm going to flip it over and put the edges of my paper down. We want to make sure that all of the plastic is covered up nicely. All right, final look. You just want to make sure that everything is down well. There's no bubbles. Everything is smooth. So at this point, we are ready to go.
Much the way they need to be. Just kind of check, make sure you don't have an air bubble on the very edge, and just kind of run your finger along. Then I flip my disc over and I take a small piece of vinyl, cut out, and strap one into there, and strap one in there, tie it down, and this is my handle that I'll be putting it in the die with.
You make a handle, really?
Yes. All right, Jesse normally, I think, uses this lovely enameled pan. I use that big, huge monster thing, so we're going to be starting to boil my water. I put a little bit of salt in there. See, physical properties of that will drop the boiling point, cause it to come to a boil a little bit faster. Allows the dye to mix at a lower temperature so that you don't warp a disc like Jesse does and make a flat as crap disc out of something that should technically not be flat as crap. Oh, one more thing we need to talk about is the plastics that we use. Don't use DX. Don't use, what is it? What's that, RC Pro? Is that the one? KC
Yeah. The KC Pro, the R Pro, don't use that.
Champions, any of the clear, the stuff that you can see through, takes a dye pretty good. The Star Plastics is a good plastic. But don't waste your time on the DX. The plastic is just not whole.
Alright, so while we're waiting for Ken's water to boil, I'll show you what I do with mine. I've got my pan, put it on the stove. I think normally I put about 1/3 of a pack of powdered RIT dye into the pan. They do make this liquid RIT. I don't care for it too much. It doesn't seem to be as concentrated a mixture as what I use with the powdered. Walmart is not carrying RIT. They carry this Dylon.
I've used that before.
This will work. I prefer RIT, but this Dylon
It's a little more expensive than the RIT stuff. You can also get it like Hobby Lobby, I think, it's got a whole roll. If you want, you can mix these colors too if you're going for different colors, and the Dylon seems to come with a lot more different colors than the regular RIT does. Sure, that's not gunpowder, man. I'm just not nervous or anything.
Alright, I'm going to put a little bit more into there. And normally what I'll do is put my leftover dye into a jar, and at this point I would pour the leftover dye over the powder to make it pretty concentrated. But for these demonstration purposes, we won't do that. I put some water on to boil in this little separate tea kettle my wife has, and by the way, normally you would probably want to do this in your garage. Use a 2-eye burner. We're in my kitchen, my wife is not home. I'm using her tea kettle, her stove, her counters. I've ruined a few of her towels. I've officially been banished from dyeing in the kitchen, but again, she's not home. What she doesn't know won't hurt her.
It will, however, when she sees this video, hurt you.
So, going back to this force for a second, normally what I do is get the water to the steaming point in my pan. Look at it, steam's coming off, cut the heat off, and put it in there. One time I forgot to turn the heat off, and I literally boiled this disc, and it is flat, no domey. It's a force overstable anyway. It is extra overstable. It's a broken disc. You can't throw it further than maybe 150 feet.
Well, you can't throw it.
Well, there is that.
That'd be 125 for me, folks. Just saying. Jesse can now throw me by about 30 feet. And see how it mixes up pretty much just by pouring the fluid into it. You really don't have to get too much more of a mix going.
Well, actually, what I do is get a wooden chopstick and stir it. You want to make sure all the bubbles are out of it. I poured that in there a little hard.
Because why are bubbles bad? Because bubbles will cause a blank spot in your dye.
Yes.
And the surface looks pretty clean. What I normally do, I don't know how Jesse does, but I take my handle and I bring it in on an edge. And that way, if there is any bubbles, I push down a little bit. there aren't any bubbles, they work out to the edge. And we'll probably let that set 5-10 minutes. We brought the water to a boil and poured it, and of course it's off the boil now, but it's still pretty hot. I'm wearing safety gloves because I really don't like black fingerprints.
Turn the water off. I still have some bubbles around the edge. I'm not worried about that because my design is not at the edge of my disc, so I'll be fine with that. Carefully lay it in, and as Ken did, I'm putting it in as an angle, so if there is a bubble, it should push it to the edge of the disc. So we've got it in there, and we'll let it sit in there. I normally do mine 20 to 25 minutes. About halfway through, I'll pull it out and I'll put it back in there just in case there was a bubble. Because I have had a bubble and you get a little blank spot on your disc. It sucks, you hate yourself.
Alright, let's bring this up and take a look at it, see what we got. That looks pretty good right there. It's hard to tell right now, but if you had a bubble, you could see it pretty clearly. Let's go ahead, bring it over here and rinse it. Bring it in low. This is really sticky stuff. Oh. And this is the reason you wash it first, because you don't want active dye hitting your newly cleaned plastic. Okay, so the rest of this is going to take me a second to pull out.
This is contact paper instead of sign vinyl, so it comes off fairly easily, especially if you run it under hot water like I am now, and that helps keep residue from building up on the disc as well. Ken was telling me that cold water fixes the dye, so I guess I'll try that out after I get this peeled. But again, I peel mine under hot water. It tends to keep the residue buildup down. Peeled off, there's still a little bit of residue. And what I do if there's any residue left is, number one, I let the disc sit for a while so that the dye fixes. And then I'll take turpentine or mineral spirits and carefully kind of go over this and wipe the residue off. If you rub too hard with the turpentine, even after it sat for a while, it will start to smear the dye that's on the disc, so just be careful there. But we're done, we've dyed the disc. Alright guys, thanks for joining us. We put some, god damn it, Ken.
Oh, the camera was rolling!